Hello, my friends. Welcome back. I am so glad you are here with me today. Take a deep breath, relax, and let this story carry you across the oceans of history. If you are new here, welcome. This is InkWell English, a place where you can improve your English through calm and meaningful stories from history. Now imagine Hawaii, February 14, 1779. Captain James Cook stands on a crowded beach, thousands of miles from England. Around him, voices rise. Men move closer. The calm morning is turning dangerous. Cook has survived violent storms, freezing seas, deadly reefs, and years of exploration across the Pacific. He has sailed farther south than almost any European before him, and mapped coastlines few in Britain understood. But today, the ocean cannot save him. Within minutes, James Cook will be dead. How did a poor farm boy from Yorkshire become one of the world's most famous explorers? And what happened on this Hawaiian beach that turned his final journey into tragedy? To understand, we must go back to the beginning. James Cook was born in 1728 in Marton, a small village in Yorkshire, England. His family was poor, and his father worked as a farm laborer. There were no sailors in the family, no powerful connections, and no reason to believe James would ever travel far from home. He grew up among fields, hard work, and simple village life. As a boy, he learned patience, discipline, and responsibility. His future seemed ordinary, but James was curious. He watched carefully, learned quickly, and wanted to understand the world around him. Before long, that curiosity would pull him away from the countryside and toward the sea. As a young man, James Cook moved to Whitby, a busy port town on the coast of England. There, he worked on merchant ships carrying coal through rough northern waters. The work was hard, but Cook learned quickly. He studied navigation, mathematics, astronomy, and the movement of wind and sea. Before long, his employers trusted him, and a secure future seemed to be waiting. He could have stayed with the merchant fleet, earned a steady living, and perhaps commanded his own ship one day. But Cook wanted something more. In 1755, he made a decision that changed his life. He left the safer world of merchant shipping and joined the Royal Navy. It was a risky choice. War was spreading, discipline was strict, and danger was everywhere. Yet the Navy offered Cook something he had never had before, a chance to prove just how far his skills could take him. By the late 1760s, Cook's skill with maps and navigation had earned him a new opportunity. Britain was preparing an important expedition across the Pacific, and Cook was chosen to command a small ship called the Endeavour. In 1768, he sailed from England with sailors, scientists, artists, and naturalists. Among them was Joseph Banks, a young scientist eager to study distant lands. Their first major destination was Tahiti, where they would observe a rare event called the transit of Venus. But Cook's voyage carried another purpose. Hidden aboard the Endeavour were secret orders that would send him far beyond Tahiti and into waters still uncertain on European maps. In 1769, the Endeavour finally reached Tahiti. Cook and his men built a temporary observatory and prepared to watch the transit of Venus. On June 3, they saw the planet move slowly across the face of the sun, completing the scientific mission that had brought them thousands of miles from England. But Tahiti gave Cook something even more valuable. There he met Tupaia, a Polynesian priest and navigator who understood the islands, languages, stars, winds, and ocean routes of the Pacific. Tupaia's knowledge was unlike anything the British sailors possessed. When he joined the Endeavour, he became an important guide and translator, especially during later encounters with Pacific peoples. Cook may have commanded the ship, but he was not exploring alone. And soon, Tupaia's knowledge would become essential as the Endeavour sailed toward New Zealand. After leaving Tahiti, Cook sailed south and west into unfamiliar waters. In October 1769, the Endeavour reached New Zealand. Cook began carefully mapping the coastline, while Tupaia helped communicate with Maori communities. Some meetings were peaceful. Others became tense and violent, showing how difficult these first encounters could be. For months, Cook sailed around the islands, measuring bays, capes, and dangerous passages. His work produced some of the most detailed European maps of New Zealand at the time. But Cook was still following his secret mission. When the mapping was finished, he turned the Endeavour west, toward another enormous coastline. In 1770, Cook and the Endeavour reached the east coast of Australia. But this was not an empty land waiting to be found. Aboriginal peoples had lived there for thousands of years, with their own cultures, languages, laws, and deep knowledge of the land. At Kamei, now known as Botany Bay, Cook and his men went ashore. Their arrival was resisted by local Gwigal people, and the first encounter quickly became tense. Cook continued north, carefully mapping the coastline and recording bays, rivers, and landmarks for European charts. For the British expedition, this was a major geographical achievement. For the people already living there, it marked the beginning of a much larger historical change. And soon, the Endeavour would face a danger far greater than any map could show. As the Endeavour sailed north along Australia's coast, disaster suddenly struck. One night, the ship crashed into the Great Barrier Reef. Sharp coral tore into the wooden hull, and seawater began rushing inside. For hours, the crew fought desperately to keep the ship afloat. They pumped water, threw heavy equipment overboard, and worked without rest. Cook knew that if the damage became worse, the Endeavour could sink far from help. Somehow, the ship survived. The crew reached the Endeavour River, where they spent weeks repairing the damage. Cook had escaped another deadly danger, but the voyage was far from over. After the Endeavour was repaired, Cook continued sailing north along Australia's east coast. In August 1770, he reached a small island near the northern tip of the continent. There, Cook claimed the eastern coastline for Britain and gave it the name New South Wales. For Cook and his crew, it was another major moment in the voyage. They had mapped a long stretch of coast that was still unfamiliar to Europeans. Aboriginal peoples had lived there for countless generations with their own communities, traditions, and connections to the land. Cook did not build a colony, and he soon sailed away. Yet his claim would have consequences far beyond his lifetime. 18 years later, British ships would return to establish a permanent colony. For now, however, Cook still had one difficult task ahead: bringing the Endeavour and his exhausted crew safely back home. The journey home was not easy. After leaving Australia, the Endeavour sailed toward Batavia in present-day Indonesia for repairs. But there, disease spread through the crew. Men who had survived storms, reefs, and months at sea began to fall sick. Malaria, dysentery, and other illnesses killed many of them. Tupaia also died during this part of the voyage. When Cook finally returned to England in 1771, he came home with new maps, scientific knowledge, and a growing reputation. But the voyage had come at a heavy cost, and Cook was not finished. Soon, he would return to the Pacific again. Cook's first voyage had changed his life, but one great question still remained. Did a huge southern continent really exist? In 1772, Cook returned to sea aboard the Resolution, with the Adventure sailing alongside him. This time, he pushed farther south than before, into freezing waters filled with fog, storms, and enormous fields of ice. In January 1773, Cook's expedition crossed the Antarctic Circle, becoming the first recorded European voyage to do so. The farther south they sailed, the more dangerous the ocean became. Icebergs rose like mountains, and bitter cold surrounded the ships. Cook never saw Antarctica itself, but his journey proved that the imagined warm southern continent did not exist in the form many Europeans had believed. Once again, Cook had changed the map, not by finding a land, but by proving where it was not. But ice and storms were not the only dangers Cook had to fight. On long voyages, another enemy could kill sailors without warning: scurvy. The disease weakened sailors, caused bleeding gums, and could eventually kill them. For centuries, it had destroyed crews on long ocean journeys. Cook paid close attention to the health of his men. He encouraged cleanliness and tried to provide fresh food whenever possible. During his first voyage around the world, no sailor died from scurvy, a remarkable achievement for the time. Cook understood something important. Reaching distant lands meant nothing if his crew could not survive the journey. Navigation made him a great explorer, but keeping men alive made him a stronger captain. By the time Cook returned from his second voyage, he was one of Britain's most famous explorers. He could have stayed home and enjoyed a safer life. But the ocean called him again. In 1776, Cook began his third and final voyage aboard the Resolution, joined by the Discovery. His main goal was to search for the Northwest Passage, a possible sea route through the far north of North America. Cook crossed the Pacific once more and sailed along the western coast of North America, pushing toward cold Arctic waters. But thick ice blocked the way, forcing him to turn back. Earlier in the voyage, Cook had reached the Hawaiian Islands, and now he decided to return there. At first, the islands offered food, rest, and a welcome break for the exhausted crew. But this second visit would end very differently. Cook was sailing toward the same beach where our story began. In February 1779, Cook returned to Kealakekua Bay in Hawaii. At first, he hoped the stop would be brief. But after a small boat was taken from his ship, Cook decided to bring the Hawaiian chief Kealakekua aboard and use him to force its return. The plan quickly failed. A crowd gathered. Voices rose. Fear and anger spread along the shore. Cook and his men tried to reach their boats, but the situation turned violent. On February 14, James Cook was killed near the water. The man who had survived storms, ice, reefs, and unknown oceans had finally reached the end of his journey. James Cook left behind a powerful but complicated legacy. To many people, he was a brilliant navigator, mapmaker, and explorer. His voyages improved European knowledge of the Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, and the Southern Oceans. His maps were remarkably accurate, and his skill at sea was extraordinary. But there is another side to his story. The lands Cook visited were already home to indigenous peoples with their own cultures, languages, laws, and histories. His journeys also helped open the way for greater British expansion and colonization. Because of this, Cook is remembered very differently today. Some see him as one of history's greatest explorers. Others see him as a symbol of colonial conquest and loss. Perhaps the most honest way to remember James Cook is to hold both truths at the same time. James Cook's name still lives on because his voyages changed how Europeans understood the world. His maps remained valuable for generations. He crossed the Pacific again and again, sailed into Antarctic waters, explored distant coastlines, and pushed ships into places few European sailors of his time had reached. Perhaps the most remarkable part of his story is how far he had come. The boy who grew up among the fields of Yorkshire had crossed some of the largest and most dangerous oceans on Earth. James Cook did not find everything he searched for, but each voyage added another piece to the map and changed how Europeans understood the world around them. James Cook crossed oceans without knowing exactly what waited beyond the horizon. Learning English can sometimes feel the same. You may not understand every word. Some days progress feels easy. Other days it feels slow. But every sentence you hear, every new word you learn, and every story you finish moves you a little farther forward. You do not need to see the whole journey today. You only need to keep going. So, keep listening, keep learning, and keep exploring. And before you go, I have one simple question for you. What surprised you most about James Cook's story? Write your answer in the comments. I would love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and join me for the next journey through history. Until next time, my friend.